So guys, brace yourselves. I'm about to take you through somewhat a very long journey of my life and what I've learned in the act of creativity. So I wasn't always a creative person and I wasn't always the most confident person, but creativity has really changed that for me. So as I'm showing you over here, that's me when I was a kid. It was a good snapshot, and this is me today. But before that, I was, and I still am, dyslexic. I disliked being around people. I don't know what it was about people. I just felt like being in my own bubble. And I also felt insecure when I was younger. I hated reading. I disliked new people. And I disliked being outside my comfort zone. These are all the things that I disliked. I was a product of the 90s, and cartoons, PlayStation, video games, all these things made me feel like, man, this is like my safe zone. I want to do this. I always dreamt of like making this as a career, but not everyone knows about these things, and not everyone has the knowledge. And I still remember what I did love doing was playing, imagining, and building stuff. Like my day-to-day would literally be having a box. I'd open it up, see what's inside the box, and just try and make something out of it. It used to be something that used to bring me so much joy. And when it came to me choosing a career path, I felt a lot of uncertainty. I felt a lot of uncomfort. And so I did this almost like ikigai in a certain sense, but I didn't actually know what I was thinking about, but this is what I thought, okay? This is my equation. I love cartoons, okay? Back then I didn't know. I was really interested in brands, and what the world needed was, better stories. So I said, okay, what's a career in that? And like all things in Malta, my cousin actually recommended, hey, Zach, you should try out graphic design. And I said, you know what, okay, I'll try this graphic design thing out. And when I found out what graphic design is, I said, shit, I have to deal with people. I don't like people. And I said, well, what am I going to do? So, testing, 1, 2, 3. I said, what am I going to do? And I'm like, okay, I also dislike reading, but I want to start reading. I looked up the top book about people, and it's How to Win Friends and Influence People. And this book changed everything for me. So what I liked about this book was it changed my perspective on people. It made me say every single person that I meet has a treasure, has a story to tell. And if I don't get to learn about that, shame on me. So I started becoming very, very curious about people. And what that translated to was I could tell better stories in their adverts. I could tell brand stories even better. So here are some adverts that I had done at the time. For Martini, for example, I created some packaging also. Salini, Rolex Military Race, the Malta Film Awards. And then I'd got to a point, after a few years, I started saying wow, this is cool, but my soul feels empty. I feel like I'm not happy. I'm doing the work for people, but I think it's time that I start doing something for myself. So I looked at the equation again, and I was like, maybe I need to pause it on the world and do something for myself. And to get perspective, what do we all do? We tend to travel, We travel, we get to see our lives from afar, and we start saying okay, here's what I'm doing wrong. This is how I want to change my life. And in traveling, I started paying attention. I don't know how to go back. I started paying attention to culture, and I started saying cool. Barcelona has really nice culture. When I got back to Malta, I'm whoa, we have a lot over here. And it just so happens this song came on, and someone was speaking about it. For those who don't know, who are not Maltese, this means a country of Mickey Mouse. It's a horrible country, what a joke of a country. And I said, what if this was a positive thing, What if we had to combine cartoons, which what I love, and Malta? And this was my very first sketch. This is the first thing that I created, which from that point onwards set me on a crazy journey. And I started noticing this excitement inside me. I started suddenly feeling alive. I started feeling excited about trying some really weird ideas. So I started sketching, I started including technology, laser cutting, and I was like, wow, okay, I can maybe build a Disney out of Malta. And it started feeling more like play, like when I was a kid again. I was playing with technology, I was using graphic design, and I just felt so alive. And then I just realized, I'm like, maybe excitement is a compass. That you should follow what makes you excited, what makes you feel alive. But then, I started saying like, shit, it's not sustainable. Because you get excited, you do the work, and then it just dies down. So then I got curious, I'm like, okay, how can I make it sustainable? And I went back to reading, and I said, okay, I have to do this, like, it's reading. And I read this really good book, which is The Compound Effect. And this book alone changed my life. It taught me the power of habits, routine, and compounded habits. And I said, okay, I'm going to start having a daily routine. I'm dyslexic, 10 pages a day. I want to start doing a drawing a day. And then I read this follow-up book, which is Show Your Work, which says, if you're going to create the work every single day, might as well just show it. And the dividends of this paid off so well. So when you're going to draw and you're going to show up every single day, you need something. You need some restrictions to be creative, to think outside the box. You need to have a box in the first place. And this character, Pepe, was my box. I used him, and I said, I'm going to explore style. I'm going to explore anything that I want. And I think this is one of the nicest exercises I've ever done. I said, I'm going to show up in the world of different artists and replicate their style and write something that I genuinely like about them. And I did this every single day for a whole year. And in doing so, I found myself through others, which is an exercise that really blew me away. And one day, I still remember, I drew this guy, Gary Taxari, and I was really excited. The next day, I get an email from him. I couldn't believe it. I opened the email, and the guy tried to sue me. No, I'm like, what's this? And he told me, you're infringing on my copyright. I'm like, did you even read the message? Because I said how much I appreciate his work and all this. He told me, I don't care, mate, reread what I wrote. I'm like, okay. I removed it straight away. That's when you kind of lose a bit of respect for your heroes, you know? Then something exciting happened. I started posting more of my work. I ran out of artists to draw, and I went on Twitter. And when I posted this, I couldn't even believe it. It was the boom of NFTs. This guy reached out to me and told me, holy crap, Zach, I love your work. Let's mint it as an NFT. And anyone who understands business, when you have an MVP and something works, you should try and do it again. If you hit something and it works, do it again. And so it sold, and I kept on replicating this and collaborating, adding value to these collections. And it sold, and we were both happy. So it ended up into 22 collaborations. And in the process of this whole year doing this and starting to get a bit of sales, I said, oh wow, I found my style. I know what I like, I know what I don't like. So now I started saying, like, what about my career? Maybe I need to question that again. And then I read this amazing book, Think and Grow Rich. And it taught me whatever you think and you believe, you achieve. It's almost like a religion. And that's when I said, okay, I've been drawing every single day. I think now it's time. I'll draw every single day. I'll share the work every single day. And I'll put it up for sale. And that was a crazy adventure. It allowed me to explore different styles, different materials. It allowed me to explore 3D, 2D. And what came out of that, which is amazing, is I started being asked to speak abroad and around the world. But not just about my art, but about my ideas, about the technology, about the ideas that I'm exploring. I 2x'd my goal from Think and Grow Rich, but then I burnt out because I said yes to a lot of things, which sucks. At this stage, I started saying, okay, maybe I need to take a step back and stop focusing on the digital side and start focusing more on, building a brand, things that you can actually touch. And at that point in time, I realized I put myself in many labels, and people like to classify people under labels. That's why I struggle today. I couldn't tell you what I am. And I mean, it's cool to say you're an illustrator, an artist, but I feel like I'm much more than that, and I can do a lot more than that. So I said, maybe instead of saying I'm an artist, an illustrator, all that, maybe I can just say I'm a brand. You can leave it like that. You can keep it general. And I said, okay, what would be something crazy that I'd love to do? And the first thing that popped to mind was, I want to create a large-scale monument. And this was my go at it. I didn't know how to go about it. A friend of mine had told me, listen, usually the government, sometimes they issue these tenders, you should try apply for it. I have no idea about architecture, no idea about how to do any of this stuff. So I applied, created a nice presentation, created some renders, got someone to do a prototype, and after 2 months, they completely ghosted me. And I called them up, I'm like, yo, you remember that project like I pitched to you? And they're like, yes. I'm like, listen, well, can I have some feedback? They're like, I thought it was a joke, like. I'm like, no. And they told me because it looks like a Disney character. I'm like, that's the point. And they're like, no. And so I took that and I said, okay, cool. Like, and I said, anyway, oh, cool, values design. And I said, the Land of Mercury Towers, they're like really kick-ass. They brought Zaha Hadid, so they're gonna appreciate design, you know? So I went to them and I presented this idea. I changed it up for them, and this is the original sketch that I want to show you. I showed it to them, I told them, listen, you have a really cool modern building. Why wouldn't you consider modernizing our culture as well? You know, bring it in the forefront. Zaha Hadid would have liked it if she was alive. And it was like, yes, I like it. So he said, yes. He said, yes, we don't do one, we do 5 sculptures. I'm like, amazing. What he told me, he told me, how do you feel about doing a shop? I told him, oh yeah, yes, I can, no problem. I can do a shop. And then I said, shit, once again. I said, I don't know how to make sculptures and I don't know how to create products. I don't, let alone manage a shop. And like all things, you say yes to things, but the beauty is then you figure it out. Hey, you ask Chiku, you ask Peppu, you ask someone, and you figure it out. And I said, okay, man, I'm going to create a brand out of it. I'm going to create a narrative. And so we came up with these characters, and the narrative is that these characters basically are in their natural habitat, okay? And Mercury is erected, and they're all seeing it, and they're all going to make their way to their new home, which is Mercury. And once they get there, they become fossilized in bronze, and there will be a shop also. So here, one by one, you're seeing all the characters. They're seeing it like Tomas over here, Nino over here is like a scaredy cat. Then you have Tomas here, who's a brave knight, but he's super clumsy. They all have like a lot of backstory. As you can tell, I listen to a lot of Disney and Pixar, and anyway, we ended up designing over 400 different products. From white labeling to unique manufacturing. What that means is you start with a sketch, then you literally do prototypes, then you create molds, then you actually get a minimum quantity order, then you make sure you protect them. It was a crazy process. I learned a lot within this period, all by saying a simple yes. I felt extremely stretched. I had to run a company of 9 people. I was the technician, I was the manager, and I was also the entrepreneur, which I felt was a bit too much for me. And so that resulted in the shop closing. And at that point in time, I learned a very big lesson, that you are not your work, and you need to let go of your ego. And that was a very hard lesson to learn. But then I realized, okay, well, the shop closes, then we can just move the stock and get them in the right hands. And we positioned them with Heritage Malta and Odyssey. And we also did some licensing deals, because it is a local product. But now I'm going to talk about the thing that made me feel the most alive, which was the sculptures. I was around people I've never been around, which are architects. I love the idea that they think about space, and even getting to speak to the Zaha Hadid team was super exciting. And even for me, you know, seeing something like this, you know, Marsa Junction, although they said no, they kind of missed out, because these sculptures, they did quite well for themselves. They won a few awards, they're different, and the way people interact with them is just, they weren't designed for that, they can withstand it, but it's just so nice to see people interact with sculptures. You're not going to see people interacting with something behind glass like this, you know? And it led to more projects, but now zooming out, I have a bit of a vision. I want to turn Malta into an actual Disneyland, but with sculptures, you know, all around, as a place of wonder. When you come around, you get to learn about stories. So that person that you saw is a very different person in the beginning to now. Creativity has changed me. It's given me confidence, and it's allowed me to believe in myself. I do read now. I do like people a lot. And I do. And I like to challenge myself. And if I had to leave you with something really, really pure, what I've learned is these 3 C's. You need to be curious. Follow what excites you. There is something that you're curious about, you should follow it. Use it as a guide. The second is show care. Do it for people. Like when I did that project of the dailies, and I gave something sentimental and wrote something sentimental, I made a lot of friends. I built a following. A lot has changed for me just by caring. Empathy is a power, and it's a skill, and you should use it. And then have the courage. Have the courage to show up. Have the courage to do the work. Have the courage to stick to your words. And lastly, I'm going to leave you with these really, really quick tips, which are based on what happened. Do it for yourself. That's the first thing. Don't do it for anyone else first. First, do it for yourself. Second, constraints fuel creativity. And what I mean by this is to think outside the box. You need to have a box. If you don't have limitations, you're not going to get anywhere. So create your limitations. You are not your work. This is a very, very important one. And one to remember, if something goes wrong, even if you start a startup, it doesn't matter. You're going to show up and do another one. Yes, then figure it out. I think this is one of the best ones. Whenever someone tells me something and it sounds crazy, yes, I can do it. And then I think Patrick will like this one. And this one is, compound your experience. I did a shortcut, compound your experience and your confidence. Because when you compound it, you can take on bigger projects. If you had to tell that little kid to create sculptures, he'd tell you no way. But because of the compound, it sounds easier and easier. So that's my talk, guys. Thank you very much.